Before we will speak about foundations of the classical geopolitics during the Cold War, let's just make a statement that, ironically, it was the United States where the main doctrines and the main statements about the new Cold War geopolitics were made. Ironically, because the United States, on the one hand, was initially the state that had the Monroe Doctrine, meaning that the United States for a long time did not try to participate in international relations at large. And second, ironically, because in the United States there was a tradition of opposing the traditional geopolitics, calling it a pseudoscience during the times of the Second World War. However, it was the United States that declared the Truman Doctrine. It was the United States as a place where the Churchill introduced his Iron Curtain speech, as well as it was representative of the United States, George Kennan, who actually made all these statements about the new Cold War geopolitics in his long telegram. All these three statements became the ideological foundation of the new Cold War geopolitics, and ideology became one of the three main driving forces of this new geopolitical confrontation between the great powers. On the one hand, the new geopolitics, how we call it, the classical geopolitics or the Cold War geopolitics, did not clearly abandon the previous concepts. It didn't use them. It didn't use the concepts of heartland or rimland. It didn't use many statements of the traditional geopolitics. However, it never refused from them. For example, in the Kennan's long telegram, it was mentioned that no single power has a right to control the whole Eurasian continent, which was very close to the initial theories of heartland and rimland by Mackinder and Spikeman. However, on the other hand, the new classical geopolitics needed its own concepts, and it developed these concepts to describe the competition between the Soviet Union and the United States, between the communist world and the capitalist or the free world. The new concepts such as containment, domino theory, third world, balance of power appeared in order to explain the new distribution of power in the world, the new places of competition between the great powers, and so on. The first new geopolitical concept, containment, was first introduced in 1946 in the famous journal The Foreign Affairs. It was published by the unknown Mr. X, and it was about the international situation between the Soviet Union and the United States, between the communist and the capitalist world. And this article actually repeated many statements made previously by George Kennan, that no peaceful coexistence between these two camps can be achieved. It wasn't a surprise that actually this person was George Kennan himself, who tried in this journal to formulate a new ideology, or in other words, a new geopolitical logic for foreign policy of the United States. According to this logic, the Soviet Union would inevitably spread everywhere and would inevitably try to spread its influence and the communist ideology and to establish the communist regimes in different parts of the world. And the only way to stop spread of Soviet Union was containment. Containment policy everywhere, in every piece of land where the Soviet Union can bring its communist ideas. The second new concept of classical geopolitics was the third world. It was invented because the world actually was divided into two parts. The first one was the communist world, led by the Soviet Union. The second part was the free world, led by the United States and its allies in Western Europe. It included the United States itself, the Western Europe, Japan, and some other countries as well. However, there was a situation when not all countries decided to choose between these two political camps. Some of them preferred to stay apart from this competition. And to somehow describe these countries that decided to stay apart, the new concept, the third world, was invented. The first world for the capitalist countries, for the free world, the second world for socialist countries, and the third for the rest of the world. The third concept of the Cold War geopolitics was the domino theory. It was another concept to give instruments to the United States how to act and where to act. The first concept, containment, told what the United States should do. The Third World concept described some places, meaning where the United States should act. The third concept, the dominant theory, made it clear that the United States actually should act, because if they didn't, they would see spread of communism. According to the dominant theory, there were a lot of regions in the world where one single country became communist, and the logic was the following: if only one country in the region becomes communist, it means that the other states that surrounded this country, neighboring to this country, they could accept the communist ideology as well. Like the dominoes, all these countries could, in theory, fall, and the United States, as well as its European allies, would lose their influence in the whole region. That's why the idea was not to allow spread of communists even in one single country in a certain region. Here you see the example of Southeast Asia, when it was important for the United States not to allow countries like Vietnam to become communist in order to prevent the further spread of communist ideology that already appeared in China and in North Korea, north to Vietnam. To sum up, ideology became one of the main driving forces of foreign policy of the main great powers, or actually the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. How they were called superpowers because they dominated the all other countries and led their camps. Geopolitics, together with realism, were aimed to explain the logic of this competition between the United States and the Soviet Union everywhere in the world. Geopolitics and realism together told that both camps tried to contain each other, that both camps were aimed to spread their influence and to not allow to their opponent to do the same. However, geopolitics was very important in order to explain places where the attention of these two superpowers should be focused, the places where they should act, the places where their foreign policy should be concentrated. The theories like the domino theory, for example, showed this place in the Southeast Asia, and it was like a precondition for the United States to participate in the Vietnam War. As well as for the Soviet Union, it was the precondition to spread its influence in Eastern Europe and to support the communist regimes in these states in order to provide its security. The final question here is, was ideology the only driving force of this competition? And the answer is no, there were some more.